Hi, I'm Scott Wyman, the Training and Technology Coordinator at Central Texas College. Welcome back to my online training channel. This session will cover equal employment opportunity and sexual harassment prevention training. Here we go. I'm going to try and keep this shorter than last time. Again, I'm going to break this class or this session down into two sections. The first section will talk about equal employment opportunity. The second section will talk about sexual harassment. All right. If you have any questions, feel free to give me a call. I'll put my phone number up here for you. I'll put my email address up here for you. And I'm always available on Teams. All right, so our objectives for this first half of this lesson for discrimination, we're going to look at discrimination and harassment, not sexual harassment, but unlawful harassment. So our objectives for this part, number one, I want to increase your understanding of CTCD's policies and procedures and how they relate to employment discrimination and harassment. Number two, I want to provide a forum to discuss expected behaviors for employees in the workplace. Now, this isn't a streaming session. We're not interactive. You can't, raise your hand and say, hey, Scott, I have a question. But you do have my phone number and you do have my email address, and I'm available on Teams. If you have any questions, comments about the presentation, please feel free to let me know. I'm always open to suggestions and corrections because I'm not perfect. If you need more information than what I'm going to provide you here in this training, one of the best places I know to go to is the EEOC's website. That's the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission in Washington, D.C. Their website is www.eeoc.gov. Another place you can go is the CTC website. Make your way out to the CTC main page, click on Faculty and Staff, and then you can find the Human Resources page there. You'll find our policies and procedures manual, real easy to find, one click and you're there. All right, so the thing about this EEO compliance is everyone must comply with these policies and procedures. No one is exempt. I don't care who you are, what your job is, or who you think you are because of what your job is. Everybody has to follow these rules and these laws. Okay, applies to everybody. So we're going to look at a couple of definitions first. The first definition we're going to look at is unlawful employment discrimination. This is a behavior which occurs when employment decisions are based on a protected category under state or federal law. So there's two key parts to this. Number one is it must involve employment decision. So just think about all the things you do throughout the day that are based or are employment, and you're doing them because it was an employment decision from somebody. So must involve an employment decision. Number two, it must be based on a protected category, and that's any of the protected categories under state or federal law. Now we're going to look at those protected categories. There's a total of 8, I believe. Okay, so you can keep track as we go through. All right, so that's unlawful employment discrimination. Next, we're going to take a look at unlawful harassment. Not all harassment is unlawful. It's probably uncalled for and inappropriate for the workplace, but not all harassment is unlawful. If you're found to be involved in unlawful harassment, then, well, you could face some consequences for that. And we'll see some of that later on too. So unlawful harassment is repeated, unwelcome, and offensive slurs, jokes, or other oral, written, graphic, or physical conduct relating to any of the protected categories under state or federal law. So again, two key parts to this. Number one, it must be repeated. A single isolated incident does not make unlawful harassment. Again, it's probably still inappropriate for the workplace, but it does not make unlawful harassment. But if it's repeated, and the second part of this, if it's based on a protected category. So the best thing to do is just don't harass. Okay? Don't wait for that second one in order to meet the repeated part. Just don't do it. Come to work, be a professional. That's why we hired you. All right, so those are the two main definitions that we're going to focus on, that our laws are based on as we go through this first part of the lesson. So the first thing you want to understand is that there are federal equal opportunity laws out there, okay? Federal equal employment opportunity laws, and they're out there to protect all of us. No matter who you are, these laws protect you from discrimination and unlawful harassment. Anybody and everybody could be subject to unlawful harassment or discrimination. So these laws prohibit employment discrimination. They cover personnel decisions that could affect employees or applicants' employment opportunities. So the folks out there applying for the jobs are covered under these laws, just like you and I are covered when we already work here. So the first of these laws we're going to take a look at is the Civil Rights Act of 1964 as amended. The Civil Rights Act ended segregation in public places, and it also banned employment discrimination on the basis of, and here are our first set of protected categories: race, religion, sex, color, and national origin. Those are the initial 5 protected categories as set forth in Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So those protected categories, we're just going to take a look at them briefly. We're not going to go in depth with these, okay? But race is the first one. Race discrimination includes treating someone unfavorably on the basis of, and there are a few different categories, a few different subjects or topics here that could be considered. But number one is ancestry, right? Where your family originated from. Even though national origin is a protected category, right? That's one of the 5, race, religion, sex, color, national origin. Ancestry could be considered part of race discrimination. So we need to be aware of that. Some of these may overlap. Cultural characteristics, facial features, hair texture, body makeup, things of that nature could all be considered to be associated with certain races. So again, just be careful. Treat everyone the same. That's all we got to do. Treat everyone the same. So here's your test. What are other characteristics that you can think of that may be considered race? Feel free to shoot me a Teams message. Feel free to shoot me an email. Give me a call. Hey, Scott, I want to answer your question. I'll listen. I'll tell you whether you're right or wrong. Okay? How about skin color? Did you think about that one? Color is a protected category, right? Race, religion, sex, color, and national origin. But skin color could be the basis of race discrimination. Again, some of these are going to overlap. Hair texture, I already mentioned that one. Facial features, I believe I already mentioned that one. So the next category under Title VII is religion. Religious discrimination involves treating a person unfavorably because of his or her religious beliefs or lack thereof. A person who has no religious beliefs can file a complaint of religious discrimination if they're treated unfavorably or unfairly based on those beliefs. So there are thousands of different religions out there, folks, and they're usually very, very deep set in our hearts and in our brains. So we need to be respectful of that. That's a big, big part of this is respectful. If you expect people to respect you and your beliefs, then you in turn must respect them and their beliefs, even though they're different than yours. Sure, we're going to have different beliefs. It's a given. But just because we have different religious beliefs doesn't mean we can't get along. Doesn't mean we can't chat. Well, I came across a couple of gentlemen just a few weeks ago. There was a pagan and a devout Christian standing on a street corner discussing yard work because they both loved gardening and flowers and plants. and they got along just fine. And that's all it takes, right? Respect for the other person, respect for their beliefs. I'm not going to hammer on this forever and ever, even though I could, okay? Just know that we're all different. We have different beliefs. Just respect that. Part of this religion category is that employers must provide religious accommodation as long as it doesn't create undue hardship on the employer. You can't forget that part. Okay, if you need some time off to go to a religious retreat, or some, if your worship time is in the middle of the morning or in the middle of the afternoon, and you need some time to go take care of your religious needs, your supervisor should allow that, but you need to understand that it's not free time. If it happens during work hours, you're going to have to take leave. You're going to have to submit a leave form. And that leave form, if your supervisor knows that it's to accommodate religious needs, then that leave should go to the top of the priority pile. Okay, so that's religion. Again, I'm not gonna go deep into it. I could give you hundreds of stories from when I was a military equal opportunity technician. We saw lots of religious discrimination. All right, the next category is sex or gender. Sex and gender kind of fall under the same category, even though they are sort of two different things. But treating someone unfavorably because of that person's sex or gender, including their sexual orientation, gender identity, or pregnancy, is unlawful. So by birth, we have two sexes, male and female. That's kind of a given. But then those males and females, they're guided by society on how they should behave as they grow. And this is where the gender part of this comes in, because males are raised to be masculine, strong, and not show emotions and all of that kind of stuff. And females are taught to be gentle and caring. But you can have males who are that gentle and caring. And you can have females who are that strong and not wanting to show emotion, that kind of stuff. And again, we need to respect that. We're all different. We're all different inside. All you have to do is respect the other person. Color is the next protected category. This is simply pigmentation, the color of your skin, no more, no less. I don't even know how to go deeper into that because there is no deeper. Under this category, you can have two people of the same race filing color discrimination complaints against each other. Okay, simply based on the shade of their skin, the difference in skin tone. National origin is the last of the initial 5 protected categories, and this is an individual's place of birth or their family's country of origin. If you're a first-generation immigrant, then it's what country you came from. If you're a second or subsequent generation, then it's your family's country of origin, country or countries, right? For example, I'm the traditional European American. My family's come from Scotland, Ireland, England, and Germany. They immigrated to the Northeast back in the 1700s and spread out from there. So if you're treated differently based on your family heritage, then that's unlawful discrimination or unlawful harassment, depending on what's going on. If somebody's telling jokes and it relates to your family in one of these protected categories and it's repeated, then it's unlawful harassment. We tend to focus more on discrimination, but all of these protected categories can also fall into that definition of unlawful harassment if it's repeated, unwelcome, and based on a protected category. All right, let's talk. This is your first lesson. Unless you've been through this training before, then it's probably your second or third or, I don't know, 16th. But y'all need to understand proper reporting procedures. If you believe you've been harassed or discriminated, and it falls under the category of the unlawful harassment or discrimination, the first thing you need to do is document. Document, document, document. If it's not documented, it never happened. How do you document it? Well, you can send yourself an email. You can send yourself a text. Don't call yourself because you probably won't answer. Or simply write it down. Go the old-fashioned way, or write it down. Make sure you include dates, times, names, all the important stuff. The who, what, when, where, why. And probably the most important of those is how it made you feel. Because we're all different, how that action made you feel is the basis for your complaint. So after you've documented it, now you need to report that bad behavior. Who are you going to report it to? Well, that's up to you. Ideally, we're going to resolve issues at the lowest level. So preferably speak to the individual who did the discriminating or the harassing and just say, hey, John, hey, Sally, I didn't appreciate that comment. Please don't say those things again. Don't come off all half-cocked and threaten them with termination and all that because you don't have that power. Maintain composure or simply say, John, Sally, I didn't appreciate that comment. Please don't make that type of comments again. And then document that you reported it. On Thursday at 2:25 p.m., I told John that the comment he made about the Scottish sheep farmer was offensive to me, and I asked him not to say it again. That way, if it happens, you just repeat steps 1 and 2. If it happens again, document, 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 because now it's repeated. So if it was harassment, now it's repeated harassment. He or she has met both of those categories. Repeated and based on a protected category. So you document, 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 then you report. If it happens again, you document, 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 and you report. Document, 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 and report. I wouldn't keep going back to the individual who made the comment or whatever action was done, because if they didn't listen to you the first time, they probably won't listen to you the second time. So if it happens the second time, go to your supervisor. Supervisors have the power to administer discipline. So if something like that happens and we have witnesses, we have documentation, we have some sort of proof, then action can be taken. Because the first thing your supervisor should do is call Jackie Thomas, our EEO coordinator, and say, hey, I have a situation here. How should I handle it? And your supervisor and Jackie will hash out the details, and they'll initiate an investigation and get things taken care of. But if you don't document it, and if you don't report it, and if you don't document and report it the second time, or the third time, or the fourth time, nothing's going to happen. The process works, but it takes you to make it work. You can't just give up and say, oh, I reported it once and nothing happened. You don't know if anything happened or not because you're not part of the disciplinary procedures. You don't know what happened in the background to John and Sally. Have faith in the system. Like I said, if there's documented proof, we got witnesses, whatever the case may be, if they find enough information, they're going to take action. But they're not going to tell you what action was taken because you don't need to know that. They'll tell you that your allegations were looked into and appropriate action was taken. Don't forget this. This is the biggest flaw in the system because people don't follow this. It's not the system that's at fault. It's the people. All right. The EEOC are the folks who enforce Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. It prohibits retaliation against employees who oppose discrimination or a person assisting in an investigation of a complaint. So anybody and everybody who's involved with a complaint process, they're protected against retaliation. Retaliation, if you're not sure what that is, that's taking some sort of negative action against a person who opposes discrimination or who filed a complaint against someone for discrimination or harassment, or a witness or an investigating officer or anybody involved. They're protected against that negative action for participating in a complaint process. Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 gives you 180 days from the time an incident occurs to file a complaint. If you go past that 180-day point, don't waste your time. And that's the most recent, not the first, right? Because you can have things happen repeatedly. And as long as the most recent one is within 180 days, then you're free to file a complaint. Right? 180 days. The EEOC has expanded that time frame to 300 days. If it's based on a category that falls under the EEOC, which I believe all 5 of those do. Don't wait 300 days to file a complaint, please. Don't wait 180 days to file a complaint. The sooner you report this bad behavior, the fresher it's going to be in everybody's minds. So if it happens today, report it today. If it happened yesterday, report it today. Don't wait. All right, the next federal law we're going to take a look at is the Equal Pay Act of 1963. This one's easy. It prohibits discrimination in pay based on gender or sex. A male and a female doing the same job should get the same pay. Doesn't always happen that way, but they should. That's what the law says. Equal pay. The job circumstances have to be the same for this. You can't have, somebody say, we're talking about lawyers. You can't have a lawyer fresh out of law school and a lawyer who's been practicing for 20 years. You can't expect them to get the same pay just because they're doing the same job. Right? There's a difference there. Experience is going to warrant a higher salary. But if you get 2 lawyers fresh out of law school, one male, one female, they got the same education, the same experience, then they should be getting the same pay. That's what this law says. That's what this law is in place for. Then we have the Fair Pay Act of 2009. Because the Equal Pay Act of 1963 is a little flawed, they come up with the Fair Pay Act of 2009. There was a young lady who worked for Goodyear. That's a picture of her there. After she retired, she found out she was getting paid less than her male peers, even though she had more time on a job, more experience, more education, more everything. She was getting less money. So she filed a complaint with the EEOC. The EEOC said, that ain't right. Let's take them to court. They took them to court. The court said, that ain't right. Goodyear, give her $2 million. Goodyear said, don't you spend any of our money because we're going to get it back. And they went to the appeals court. And then the appeals, they said, hey, look, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 says you have 180 days from the time an incident occurs to file a complaint. It's been way more than 180 days since she agreed upon a salary. Because that's what they look at when they're looking at equal pay. They look at when you agreed upon a salary. The appeals court said, you're right, give them their money back. The EEOC didn't find that amusing at all, and neither did this young lady. So the EEOC asked her to come to Washington and help them lobby for the Fair Pay Act of 2009. So she did. She went to Washington, she lobbied and lobbied and lobbied, and all her work paid off because in February of 2009, President Obama signed into law the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act of 2009. This act amends the Civil Rights Act of 1964. What this does is it states that the day you agree upon a salary was the last time you got paid. If you get paid today and you don't believe you got paid enough, you're going to go to your boss and you're going to negotiate for a higher salary. If you're satisfied with that pay, then the negotiation is over. But your 180 days resets that day you get paid. So in 2 weeks, when you get paid again, that 180 days resets again. Isn't that fun? Huh? Yeah. So the courts backdated this law 2 years. So Lilly got her $2 million plus 2 years back pay. Woohoo! Thank you, Lilly. Then we have the Age Discrimination Employment Act of 1967 as amended. This is another fairly simple one. It prohibits discrimination by public and private employers in all personnel decisions because of a person's age. The kicker to this one is you must be 40 or older before you can claim age discrimination. You can be discriminated against based on your age if you're younger than 40, but it's not unlawful then. Must be 40 or older for this. All right, so now we're moving on to the Americans with Disabilities Act. This is a pretty big situation here. It's a large category with lots and lots of information. I'll try and keep it toned down to a minimum. But what this law does is it prohibits discrimination by employers in personnel decisions based on mental or physical disabilities. So 2 different types, mental or physical disabilities. An individual must meet the definition of a disability. So their impairment must meet the definition of a disability. So an employer has an affirmative duty to make reasonable workplace accommodation that does not constitute undue hardship on the employer. And usually the bottom line for these ADA accommodations is money, plain and simple. If the employer has the money to provide whatever accommodation is needed, then they are required by law to provide that accommodation. Plain and simple. Now, in 2008, President Bush signed into law the Americans with Disabilities Act Amendments Act of 2008, sometimes just referred to as the Act or the ADA Amendments Act. But what this did is it made significant changes to the term disability. What do you consider a disability? Because it's not just, the loss of an arm or the loss of an eye or something of that nature anymore. This amendment expands the definition of major life activity by including 2 non-exhaustive lists. Major life activity is one of the parts where an impairment must be met to be considered a disability. If the individual has a physical or mental condition that substantially limits a major life activity. Major life activities are things like walking, talking, reading, speaking, things of that nature. So this new act expands on that. So the first part of that list includes major life activities that the EEOC already recognized. But it also recognizes some that they didn't. So the new list includes major bodily functions, to include functions of the immune system, normal cell growth, digestive, bowel, bladder, neurological, brain, respiratory. You can read the rest of those, okay? So if you have a condition to where one of these categories has an effect on your everyday life, then that could be considered a disability. Not saying it is, I'm saying it could be, right? I don't I don't have the power, the authority to say, yes, if this happens to you, you're disabled. That's not, no, I can't do that. I'm just saying if you have an impairment that falls under one of these categories, you could be considered disabled. That's between you and your doctor, Jackie Thomas, Holly Jordan, those folks, okay? But the definition has been expanded. All right, then we're going to take a look at some state laws. State laws are really quite simple. We're going to do this in a nutshell because I said I'm going to keep it short. Texas laws prohibit employment discrimination. They cover all personnel decisions that could affect equal employment opportunities, and they codify existing federal laws. All that means is if a federal law changes, Texas is going to change their laws to pretty much match whatever the federal laws are. That way they're in line with federal laws. Here in Texas, we have the Texas Workforce Commission Civil Rights Division Act. These are the folks that enforce the Texas Commission on Human Rights Act. The Texas Commission on Human Rights is the predecessor to the Workforce Civil Rights Division. They come up with the act, which prohibits employment discrimination in all personnel decisions based on any of the protected categories: race, religion, sex, color, national origin, age, and disability. There we go, seven protected categories. I think I said 8 before. All right, any questions? No? Okay, moving on then. We need to make sure that we apply these standards equally, not just our supervisors, or you if you are a supervisor, but everybody needs to apply these standards equally. And remember, don't retaliate against anyone who files a complaint. If someone files a complaint against you and you didn't do anything wrong, then you have nothing to worry about. If somebody files a complaint against you and you did do something wrong, now you should start to worry. But don't retaliate against that person. Don't do it. All right, so this is the end of part 1. So what you're going to need to fill out your completion form at the end of this program, part 1 and part 2, is our 8-character passcode. Right here. You'll find the first 4 characters of your pass key. Write this down because you're going to take these 4 and you're going to combine them with the 4 at the end of part 2 to make an 8-character pass key that you're going to enter into the EEO training completion form in eTrieve. All right, so appreciate you being here. I hope I didn't drag on too long for this. Stand by for part 2 if you're going to watch them back to back. If not, we'll see you next time. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay happy. And we'll talk to you later.